Good. Okay. All right, Coach, you start us off.
All right, so a lot of work out there, and continuing to move people different places and work different situations. So really pleased with how hard our guys have worked, and very competitive atmosphere out there, and guys working back from injuries and pushing themselves. So really good to see. I've said it before. I do think we have a really, really good roster, by far the best one. Shouldn't say by far, but definitely the best one since we have been here. Doesn't mean we'll be a great team, but we do have really talented, especially middle to upper half of roster.
Questions?
You've referred to the talented roster a couple of times. You've obviously been at some places where they had elite talented rosters that went all the way. Where does this roster compare to those rosters?
Well, like I just said when I kind of caught myself and said, okay, I feel like it's a really talented roster, probably top and middle. It would not be 1 through 85 necessarily, when, at USC during 34 straight wins, or when left Alabama, I think it was 26 straight wins. Those are the top of programs in the history of football at that point, roster-wise. So we're not there. I don't know that the setup now is different, so that probably is here not going to really happen, that you're going to have maybe that bottom of the third to be as elite as some programs. But you never know. I just don't think history or what even we've been able to do now, is gonna set up for that.
I know it was an option in the bowl season. I think they're kind of talking about it more. Just your thoughts on would y'all enact that communication between coach and the quarterback in the helmets?
Yeah, I've been part of those conversations for a long time, in SC meetings, and they're usually defensive head coach driven about, hey, we need to have our middle linebacker like the NFL have this, and then people can stop stealing our signals. So it's here, and, we utilize it in practice, and our first time getting used to it. I think differently, especially after using it. I think it's really like having a cheat code in Madden offensively. And I don't know that they've really thought defensively of what exactly that means. I think the assumption is just, you talk to the quarterback, but there's really more to it than that, especially the way we run our offense. So without giving too much in that of what it allows us to do with signals, with the whole process, I think it's a cheat code offensively if you do certain things offensively. So defenses coaches always wanted it, so it's here.
You guys obviously have a lot of veteran, productive wide receivers coming back. You added Juice Wells. What do you need to see from guys like Aiden Williams and Caden Lee and some of those younger receivers for them to break through in that deep room?
Yeah, our guys know we talk a lot about like every situation. There's a bad and a good to it, and Juice being hurt, some other players being hurt, allows other players chances. And Aiden's been hurt, so he's back a little bit, but Caden's been healthy, and it's allowed Caden to play inside, outside, do a lot of things. And Caden's a really good player and going to be a really special player here. So we're really excited about him.
I believe we're going to get him in a second, but Princely, U-Man, and Millan, what kind of stuck out about him to you that made him such a priority for you to get?
We've talked in here, about really the Georgia game, just kind of feeling in that game. I have felt in warm-ups, but in the game, there was a difference from a size, strength, speed ratio, especially offensive line and front seven on defense. So, as we've talked about, a big thing was, okay, well, let's really go out in the portal and get guys, because we've had some really good players here, but if you really look at them, a lot of times they've been a little undersized or maybe a little slow. They're not high draft picks. but they've done a really good job, and our coaches have done a good job with them. Watching Princely really was like, okay, here's somebody that has really ideal size and length and speed to be a really good player. One that you don't have to say, okay, well, here's how we'd use somebody, to, kind of hide some of the deficiencies, which we've done a lot of here. And so it's really good to have him, and you can see it out there. His length really shows up.
Little bit off topic, but I know you tweeted it out a little while ago, and the news came out today that Jonathan Hess is going to be competing on The Bachelorette. Do you like his odds?
I mean, I don't. Speaking of odds, I don't know what the odds are. That when it came out too, that John Mitchell was our receiver at FAU is in the same group, so that's pretty crazy. I knew for a while, but I wasn't supposed to say anything, I guess. But Hess was really excited about it. Actually, Landry, my daughter, kind of like had something to do with how they wrote in his, thing that they turn in, because she was kind of fired up for him. Her and her friends were like, yes, you could do this, because they watched this show. Like last night, there's like 10 of them on my couch. They watched The Bachelor, or Bachelorette in that case. So it'd be interesting. I kind of feel like it's kind of like the basketball tournament, or now the playoffs in football. I feel like if he can make it and get some momentum going and get past the, beginning to where people see a lot of him, then I think he's got a chance because his personality. And they asked me this morning, they said, well, what would it be in the quarterback mean? I said, it's just kind of like his Hessisms, like it's just Hess. So, but I think they're going to need enough time to see that come out.
You may have just kind of answered this, but you have 2 teenage-ish daughters. How much exposure have you had to The Bachelor and The Bachelorette?
Well, let's show my age. I used to have a long time ago, probably when it started. And then I outgrew it. And then life kind of comes back around. And so now Landry and her friends, like they come over, all these freshmen come over, and they're like, they come rolling in last night, like 5 minutes before, like ready to watch it. So they talk about it. So I see a little bit of it. I've always kind of been annoyed by it because I feel like the competition like makes people act different, because now they're like, here's 25 people and they all fall in love with the same guy. Well, that would never happen, but it's on TV, so they want to win and get to the final, so they become famous. So that part of it kind of bothers me because it's unrealistic. If somebody had 25 blind dates, 25 people aren't going to all fall in love with them, but they do on the show. So
You think some of these people pursuing social media clout over real love? It's very skeptical.
yeah, because they want to be having the next show. They're just like, I don't even care if I win necessarily, but let me cry some more here and say I love you after one date, so.
I'll be the buzzkill and ask a football question, but seeing Javonte out there, it feels like he's kind of added some size and getting Daquan out of the portal. How do you kind of view right now that tight end room?
Yeah, I think that's like what we talked about when we say like the different parts of the roster, and the goal to be really good is, to have deeper positions. So whether it's Javonte adding size and, coming into a second year, or adding portal, helping an experienced player, I think led the ACC in tight end catches maybe even. So that's really good, obviously, and that's a key to me becoming an elite team that stays there, instead of like, oh, you have a run 1 year and then you're back down for 2-3 and then maybe again, is to have depth like that, because you're going to have seasons where things don't go your way and you get some injuries and some bad breaks, and in order to survive those, you better have depth.
A year ago, the spring portal wasn't as active as, I guess, the winter portal, or whatever term you use for December, January. But that was before unlimited transfers and stuff. There's some coaches around the country that are saying they expect this to be a really active portal, for lack of a better word. Do you anticipate the same? Not specifically with your program, but just in general?
I do. Obviously, because they can transfer multiple times. And, I mean, here again, just a really stupid system. But, hey, good for the players, maybe. I mean, it's good for them financially. I don't know that it's really good for them. They know they can leave anytime, and whenever something goes wrong, they're just going to run no matter what. But I think what you're going to see, and I said this when they first started this, you're going to see people, and maybe it just happened with a high-profile player, that I'm going to go somewhere in January, I'm going to get their money, I'm going to have never played it down as a transfer, and I'm going to go back in right after spring ball into the portal and go somewhere else and get their money. So, I mean, you can say, yeah, good for the players, but is it? You know, it's good financially for them, but is that really good for college football and necessarily them? That, like, you've created a system, so you can't really blame them. You've created a system that you can go just keep getting money basically at the end of every semester somewhere else and switching spots as many times as you want. You know, let me go try out this school and take this spot and, you know, make a deal with their collective, and then I'll go try out this one. If it doesn't, you know, I don't get as many balls as I want, or it doesn't go my way, that's not good. And I think you are going to see that. I think you're going to see players that just signed in January that are going to go back in having taken the money, which is fine, and go another place and never played there. And it's not because necessarily they had a terrible spring. It's just because the system allows that.
Is there anything measures you take to try to limit that or prevent that from happening to you guys?
No, I mean, I brought it up at meetings when they first went down this second thing. I'm like, you better make something where you got to sign for a year. So all these portal players that after last season go in, at least they sign for 1 year, you know, not one semester without playing in the off season. You know, would the NFL team, would that happen in the NFL? Hey, go sign, you know, in the off season after the season and get a contract and get paid, and then before you ever play, go somewhere else.
Coach, with all the new additions up front, how do you balance creating competition with also building continuity with the offensive line group?
Sorry, I was still on the last question. Go ahead.
You good?
Because again, I'm saying on the last one, I have these rants on this thing, but because it's really a system. It is. Now we're going to utilize it, you know, just like the player uses. I'm not mad at the player. They're going to utilize the system. We're going to utilize it and make the best roster that we can, but it's not good. Go ahead.
So with all the new additions up front on the offensive line, how do you balance building creating competition with also building continuity with all the new players?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we moving them around to try to find, not just like everybody wants to find the best five, but really to make sure that as injuries happen, different things happen in games or rotations, that there's some guys that can play multiple spots and they get used to that. So we're not as much focused on the continuity right now. That's, in my opinion, more of a fall thing. This is more just getting guys used to playing different spots and used to our system.
Anything else? All right, thanks, guys.
All right,
Players
thanks.
in short.